Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's Workshop. So today I'm going to show you how to make some quick hands for a doll that I am upcycling. So the head and shoulders of the doll is mass produced. It came from a doll that I purchased, but I felt like the head was out of proportion to the body. So I created my doll body form for the doll, and I need to make some hands to attach to the arms. So I'm using the Cosclay to create the hands. Now it's really great because the Cosclay is polymer clay, but it's a little bit more flexible. And this is actually my first time trying it out. I actually did end up using it again to make a face for the body of the doll that I removed this head from. I will leave a link in the description for the video where I created the face. Now I'm just softening the clay to get it to the right consistency so I can begin to make the little hands. Now this is more or less like a teenage boy or a preteen. So his hands are going to be bigger than a child but smaller than an adult. So sometimes that gets a little bit challenging when you're making hands for dolls at different stages. You have to watch the proportions, especially when making men's and women's hands. Women's hands are a little bit smaller. My rule of thumb is that the hand should not be bigger than the face from chin to forehead. Now, dolls, you have to be very cautious with this particular part. Now, my blade is kind of dull at this point. I would never do this with a really, really sharp blade or a really brand new blade. My blade is a little bit dull, so it's not super sharp at this point, but I'm using it to split the fingers and separate them on the piece of clay. Now, when it comes to the thumb is going to really be separated because it's like kind of extended away from the other fingers. So you're definitely going to have to shape that. I'll say do that in the beginning. Make a clear definition between the thumb and the rest of the fingers. Again, do this very gently. Take your time. This is not something you do quickly. You're definitely going to have to allow yourself some practice to make hands. They're very, very challenging because they're small and it's easy for them to break. The clay will get warm on your hands, so sometimes you'll have to stop and pause to allow the clay to firm up. Now, I do not use gloves, latex gloves, when working with my polymer clay because I feel like I need to feel it. It may not be the best practice because it does leave fingerprints in the clay, but I need to feel the clay in order to know where I am. Now, dolls, after I've defined the space where the thumb is going to be, I begin to shape the fingers. I am using a silicone tool. For years, I used toothpicks and things like that to make my doll hands, but this silicone tool is really useful in smoothing and shaping. And I did get this little tip from Tiny Keyhole Minis. Now, Jolene makes a lovely doll using these tools to make the hands, and these are very helpful in the shaping of the fingers. So thanks for the tip, Jolene. And so I'm going to continue to work on the hands. And again, I'm realizing that the top of the hand is a little bit thick. So I'm shaving it down. You do this very carefully because, again, I'm using my blade, but it is not its normal sharpness. It's pretty dull. And I don't use it on my clay like this until it is kind of dull. You never use a super sharp blade when you're working with the clay really close to your fingers like this. So always be careful and cautious, dolls, to protect your own hand with any kind of crafting project because your fingers and your hands are priceless when you're a miniaturist. Now, after I kind of get the fingers elongated, I twirl them a little bit so that I can shape the fingers a little bit. And again, I do each individual finger. Now, if you realize or feel like some of your fingers are too thick, I usually pull the clay out, like drag it out so that it'll elongate the little, the appendage rather than trying to cut it off, and I kind of shape it and separate it with my silicone tool. Now, dolls, this is definitely a thing that takes practice. It's going to take some time, so you may not like your first couple sets of hands, even if you have to take some time away, step away from the project and come back, but don't give up. It takes time to learn things. I've been doing this for years and I'm still not perfect with it, but I'm better than I used to be. As long as you see consistent progress, you know that you're growing. Don't ever despise your small beginnings because each thing you do will make you a little bit better. And dolls, I don't do a lot of detailing for my doll hands. I'm comfortable with fingers and I don't do knuckles and fingernails and all of that. I just want the general shape to be natural so that the doll doesn't look like they're wearing a mitten. Now, to be fair, some of my early dolls did have mittens before I gained the confidence to go ahead and try to do fingers. If you need to start out with mitten hands for your dolls, do that. And after you perfect the mitten, begin to separate the fingers. But continue to work, continue to improve, but don't stop creating because it's a little tedious. Just take it one step at a time. Don't become frustrated with yourself while you're learning. Very few people just come straight out of the gate with perfection. It's going to take time. Even if you're gifted, you have to practice. Now, dolls, after I got the fingers to a general shape, I wanted to start working with making sure the length of the fingers was not too much, and I continued to shape it. Now, another thing I definitely want to point out, if you're making two hands, which you generally would be, make sure you position both of the thumbs up on each hand. Thumb position is major. Now here I'm using the handle of the tool to shape the palm of the hand and to roll it around and define the wrist. And now I'm using the blade to trim off some of the thickness toward the ends of the tips of the fingers so that they won't look too clubby and thick. You also see me here removing some of the clay from between the fingers to provide more definition and trimming off the edge or the side of the finger so it won't look too thick. And you will have to do this on each finger and shape it more after you remove the additional clay. Now, dolls, at this point, you have a basic shape of a hand. You can add as much more detail as you want. You can add knuckles, you can add fingernails, you can add all kinds of little defining features to the hand. This is a basic hand for me, and I'm comfortable with this hand for my doll. So I just wanted to show you my technique. So dolls, I have other videos associated with doll making and fixing dolls, so I will leave links in the description, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.